It's the Brad and John Show.
And this segment is the B block, the Bravo block for June 9th. It's a Monday, and we just got done with John's A block, which I was able to sort my sock drawer while we were on air with John. But
nice, Brad. I love it. Thank you. It's our most popular segment, not surprisingly. Have you ever looked at the average length of view time for A block, Brad?
It's about 32 seconds. Isn't that what it is?
It's pretty fantastic, and we appreciate all the people who share the word about the show.
Okay, bunch of things to talk about today. Let me look at my list here. Posse comitatus. Is that the right way to say that?
I don't know what you're saying.
Don't you ever heard of that term before?
Posse kamikaze, no.
No. Posse comitatus or something like that.
I still have no idea what you mean, Brad.
So here it is. I'm looking up right now. I'm surprised you don't know about this. POSSE comitatus, COMITATUS. The Latin term for power of the country, frequently shortened to posse, is common law, a group of people mobilized to suppress lawlessness, defend the people, or otherwise protect the place, property, and public welfare. It may be called by the conservative of peace, typically a reeve, sheriff, chief, or another special regional designee like an officer of the peace, blah, 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 blah. The posse comitatus, as an English jurisprudentiality, I can't pronounce that, defined doctrine dates back to the 9th century England. And essentially what it refers to is the fact that essentially under the posse comitatus situation in the United States, the military is not allowed to be called up for domestic problems. And yet, last night I heard they are mobilizing Marines from, 39 Palms, one of the bases right there in California that go in and take care of these rioters. What do you think about the whole thing in L.A.?
Well, I mean, where to even begin? I mean, I guess the legal question is, does Trump have a right to do X, Y, Z without the approval of Gavin Newsom? And I mean, my assumption would be yes, but I don't know if that's true. And I just think the bottom line is people are going to use any excuse they can to be violent and act like animals. And whether it's, a Michael Brown riot or whether it's some sort of using ICE and immigration as an excuse in California, you're going to have wild savages that want to tear things down and destroy things no matter what. And so immigration's as good of an excuse as any.
Well, how do you feel about the one U.S. rep who essentially put, I think it was a Twitter feed, essentially she said, F the ICE, they should stay away. I mean, what I don't quite understand about this is that, as I understand this, the ICE dudes right now and dudettes are not going after the guy who runs a food cart in downtown L.A. and came across the border 10 years ago and he's been keeping his nose clean. They're going after the rapists and the murderers and the drug dealers and the people like that. Isn't that pretty much who they're after right now?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, I think in every case that you have, if you have ICE detain 20 people, or have 20 people come in for check-ins, one of them is going to be a grandmother with a cane who just tries to help her community, and the media rallies around her. I mean, how many times have we seen this already in the state of Missouri? You have some old Chinaman woman who's got a sad story from the boot heel, and then suddenly she's, a matron saint of illegal aliens.
I don't know. What bothers me about this whole situation is that you essentially right now we have two countries, and this is why. And I made fun of the Freedom Caucus you're talking about in the state of Missouri, just like I make fun of the Black Caucus and I make fun of all these other goofy caucuses. I go back to, and John's he's gonna roll his eyes. There was a day, I think it was September.
It was the day, and it was the evening of. You keep saying it was September 12th, but it wasn't. We've documented that it's September 11th, the evening of the attacks. Yes.
And John, you describe what happened. What happened on the steps of the U.S. Capitol?
A number of federal legislators who were in D.C. got on the steps of the Capitol and sang "God Bless America" in unison. Allegedly spontaneously, after a brief news conference, they began singing together. And that was the evening of September 11th, Tuesday, 2001.
And they were Dems and Republicans, shoulder to shoulder, right?
Correct. There were news cameras there, and it was a great feeling, and everybody could stand there and act in a bipartisan way for news cameras. You're right, Brad.
And for several days after that, the United States came together. We came together. There were no, well, he's a Dem and he's a Republican. There's none of that crap going on. Oh, he's a rhino, like the Tracy Ellises of the world. He's a rhino. We don't like him, even though he's a Republican. He's a rhino. None of that crap, okay? Why can't we get back to that? Or is that just impossible in human nature? Is it just impossible to have everybody sort of get on the same page?
It's just impossible. And I'm old enough to remember the Newt Gingrich era, Brad, in which Newt Gingrich was a pariah and Republicans hated Bill Clinton and Democrats hated Newt Gingrich. And I'm old enough to remember the George W. Bush era in which he was a warmonger and a murderer and a neocon to the right and everything, Brad. And I'm old enough to remember when Barack Obama was a Muslim who was going to destroy America. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pie in the sky ideas. And we look back at history through rose-colored glasses and say, it was sure better back then. But in the moment, folks were fighting back then, too.
Okay, another crazy topic. I've seen this in the news lately, and maybe you might have a insight into this, or maybe you might know more about this. The story about the Chesterfield contractor is allowing to file liens on hundreds of homes that McBride Sons built. Do you know the story behind this?
I saw the headlines, but I didn't care enough to read about it. So what's exactly going on there?
Well, that's it. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And if you know, essentially, if you ever have any work done on your house, you're supposed to have a lien waiver because the way that works is, like, for example, if you have a new roof put on your house, and the contractor that you hires a crew, and they come out and he hires he buys a bunch of building material, shingles and drip edge and all that kind of stuff, and he doesn't pay the supplier. The supplier can therefore file a lien on your house, even though you paid the contractor, but the contractor didn't pay the supplier of the, in this case, goods, and it's also in this case services as well too. So supposedly a contractor who's doing work for McBride has not been paid, and he's saying, oh, look, I'm going to file liens on all these houses. So all these people who bought a house from McBride and Sons are now going to have a lien against them. And I'm going like, okay, what's going on with this? And I've read a couple articles, and I really can't get to the bottom of it. I thought you might know more about it. That's why I threw it out. But if you don't know, that's fine.
Yeah, I haven't. I don't follow I don't know much about the home building industry at all.
Okay. Third topic this morning. Man, you said Brad's top three would be you checking your sock drawer. I've been in bringing you into the mix. All these, right?
Oh, you sure have, Brad. You're on top of stuff.
Okay. I'm going to say 5 words, and I'm going to see if you know what this is about. And this is sort of interesting because there was a historical event that happened on Saturday night surrounding this. Good night and good luck. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That was somebody from your era. Some old-timey guy used to say that at the end of a news broadcast during the black and white era. What was that about?
Okay, here's the story behind this. This has turned into a let me see if I can pull up this link here real quick. Edward, is it Edward or?
Hey, look, we'll put my athletic socks with my dress socks.
Okay. Edward R. Murrow, who was at the time a famed news reporter, and he became very famous during World War II for his reports of what was going on. I think for a while he was actually stationed in Europe, an American newscaster. The interesting thing that happened on Saturday night was CNN, they claim for the first time in history, and very well may be, broadcast live a Broadway play. And you could, and it's interesting because someone that I know texted me this, say, "Here, you're Mr. Journalism dude, you should be watching this." And I thought to myself, well, I don't have a TV, I don't have CNN, but yet you could go onto the web, onto their website and watch it. And I watched probably the last hour of it. You know about this play? It's called...
No, was it like something liberal like Hamilton or something?
Well, no, here's what's sort of interesting. And it's funny because, in fact, I saw this on Saturday night, and then on Sunday morning I was listening to NPR, and they had a big story about this because the interesting part of this show, and it's called Thank You and Good Night, and it stars guess who? Guess who is Edward Murrow in the Broadway play?
Anderson Cooper.
George Clooney.
Oh, Oh, nice. And what would Joe Biden call him? Rick Clooney?
Joe Biden would call him Jim the Butler or something like that.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
Jim.
Okay, so George Clooney plays Edward Murrow.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks for showing up to my bar mitzvah, Ed. George, I had never been bar mitzvah before, and I appreciate you coming here. Yeah. Did I ever tell you about the time that corn pop guy tried to bar mitzvah me? That happened back in the swimming pool.
I told him in the alley, and I said, look, pal.
Right, pal. And, okay, what was interesting about this is there's two interesting parts of this play. This is now, I think, the third play on Broadway that's using video screens. And the backdrop of the play is this giant monster video screen. And what's interesting about this play is that they are interspersing clips from actual newsreel clips of the things that happen. And at a couple different times, they have Edward R. Murrow, I just call him Ed, interview people from the past. So George Clooney is sitting in a chair, and he's interviewing the actual dude. They chopped up the video so that he's actually like having this conversation with the guy, okay? So it was very well done. I have to give him credit. I'm not a play kind of guy. I have friends of mine that go, oh, go to the Fox. I mean, if you want to torture me, drag me to the Fox for a play, okay? I mean, if you said, Brad, I'm either going to take you to the Fox for a play, or you can go outside and use your bandsaw and chop off your left little finger, I'll say, I'm going to fire up my bandsaw, and I won't be able to count to 10 anymore. Okay, simple as that. Okay, but what's interesting about this is, of course, after the play, they have a round table with Mr. Cooper being the head dude. And they're lamenting the fact that, oh, look what's happened to journalism. And if you know the crazy story, and this was chronicled in the play, that Murrow sort of, he got into a big tiff with Joe McCarthy. And if you know your history, this had to do with the communists and Joe McCarthy, and they called him Tail Gunner Joe, and he was the junior senator from Wisconsin, and he was going after all the commies. And what Joe would do was Joe would ruin careers of people by saying, he's a commie, and that's what they tried to do to Edward R. Murrow. And at the time, the guy who ran CBS was William Paley, who was a very, very powerful media figure. And he figures prominently into this because in the waning days of Edward R. Murrow's prominence, he got into a little bit of a tiff with Paley where they essentially cut his staff and they cut his budget and then they cut his show to, I think, once a month or something like that. I think he had a nightly show or something like that. And it was sort of interesting because they bring, because at one point in time the character who plays Edward R. Murrow says, Edward, this is Bill Paley speaking, I could put on $64,000 question and it cost me a quarter of what your show cost me and I get 2 times the ratings. And I'm going like, okay, it never ends with the media mogul saying, well, we could put on this schlock show, which makes a lot of money, or we could put on a very well-done documentary about the influence that John Combest has had on the state of Missouri with his johncombest.com website. No, let's do the one that's going to make us money, okay?
But I think that would be a better choice. And by the way, Brad, and as a timely note, the good folks at Art City Now, which is on right now, you can go to YouTube/LouInfo. They just tweeted, Chesterfield contractor Building Block allowed to put liens on hundreds of homes in Chesterfield after a judge agrees that McBride Homes owes the contractor money. So Art City Now, that's Vic Faust's show, which runs from 6 to 8 a.m. on 590 KFNS, the former KFNS, which is now KLIS. You can watch it live at Lou Info on YouTube, and Vic is diving into this subject on McBride Homes and Building Block.
John, I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to laugh at me. You're going to throw me some curt response.
Yeah, sure.
Why is it that we help the other broadcasters, but they won't give a poop to us? Why is that?
So when you say they won't give a excretory reference to us, what do you mean by that? You mean that they won't promote? Do they know that you do radio?
See, once again, what's interesting to me is... I truly believe, as the tide rises, so do all boats. And the problem with broadcasting is we don't have, especially on a local level, we don't have a unified voice. And I'm trying to be that unifying voice.
Do we need a unified voice, you think, Brad?
Yes. We do.
Okay.
We do.
And to answer your question again, for folks who haven't heard us talk about this every week for the last 19 months, first of all, thank you for joining us if you're new here. And also, Brad, as a reminder, we don't need to treat other stations the way that other stations treat you or have treated you over the years. How somebody treats me doesn't have any effect on how I talk about them. By the way, the folks at KLIS do a great job. And, we can nitpick parts of their audio during their first week or however we want to treat them. But, they're actually out there. They're pitching advertisers. They're doing creative things. Vic runs an awesome show that I try to listen to between 6 and 7 while I'm doing show prep for this show. And how other stations talk about you, Brad, or how they've known you over the last 50 years in radio. To me, it doesn't have any impact on how I promote other stations. Well,
the point being, see, what's interesting about it is if one of my ex-program directors have heard what you just said like 2 or 3 minutes ago, if you were on the air, he would bat phone you. Because of the fact that we were always told for sporting events, never given in-game score.
Yeah, which is why I did it, Brad. So folks can stop listening to us now and they can go listen to 590 AM.
Thank you
or
very
more
much,
specifically,
John.
Realistically, everybody listens to this show on YouTube or on the podcast now. And you can go look up Lou Info and you can listen to Vic Faust Show.
You know what? Does he have a female co-host?
Not yet, Brad, but maybe he will. Are you going to talk about an incident that happened 2 years ago?
I was going to say if the female co-host, you know who they should get? See, John would agree with what I said. They should get someone from the WWE to be his female co-host.
Well, it would probably make for captivating radio, wouldn't it, Brad?
Because if he went off on her, she would just go over and pick him up and body slam him on the ground.
Man.
Don't you think that would be good?
Hey, I heard, by the way, as a credit to you, Brad, I was in New Melly for a bit of time over the weekend, and I heard our signal on 104.5 FM crystal clear, Brad, which is a testament to the work that you put in a few months ago to actually increase the signal.
When was this, yesterday?
No, I was there on Saturday.
What time?
I was there. I was driving between, let's say, 11 and then I was back in the car around 1 o'clock.
So what time did you hear the station? I got to nail you down here specifically.
I heard it pulling in at about 10:50 a.m. And then I heard it when I was leaving an event approximately 1:15.
Interesting, John. Interesting.
Yeah, and I heard some nonsense, one of your make-believe like doggy doo-doo things. I heard an unpaid ad from Bart Inman. So I didn't hear any paid advertisers, but I did hear the signal crystal clear, Brad.
Well, when I listen to KLIS, I hear the Cardinals ad and the Hot Shots ad. I think I hear it about 14 times an hour. So I
pretty good. They've gone out and got advertisers. Credit to them.
So I know the Cardinals are paying for their ads. I know darn well they're paying for it because they pay huge amounts of money to other stations to promote games. Okay, we have to take a break.